Good afternoon, Chair Whitmore, President Gray in spirit, members of the Board of Trustees and the Alumni Board, Festival Chair McDaniel, members of the Koch family, faculty, students, and friends of Hollins University. For everyone, a world is a wish, for the child, the rabbit, and the fish. Call it a wish or call it a dream of a world that could be as it can seem. Towards such a world, first comes the dream. Those words, thrown lightly and gently, are from the Dream Book by Hollins University's most widely read alumna. I'm grateful and amazed to stand before you today and join in the university's year-long tribute to Margaret Wise Brown. Since much of the time Margaret had the patience of a newborn fruit fly, I will leap into the middle of her story. Margaret believed books for readers of any age should open with a strong image, not a long preamble, so I'm certain she would approve. Craving a taste of spring, Margaret Wise Brown fled winter-weary New York City and flew to St. Augustine, Florida in March 1947. A few weeks later, she drove back to New York at the wheel of a new honey-colored Chrysler Town & Country convertible. Such post-war luxuries were at a premium, yet Margaret had paid $3,600 for her car, cash. At that time, men with families were lucky to make $2,000. Margaret Wise Brown earned $10,000 a year, an astonishing income for a 37-year-old single woman who wrote books for young children. She drove slowly north to catch spring in every state, enjoying daffodils and trilliums and the fact the color of her roadster matched her hair. Springtime suited her wild green self and was the subject of many of her poems. Apple trees as pink as pie, like strawberry ice cream in the sky, burst on my delighted eye. By 1947, Margaret Wise Brown had published 53 books in 10 years and had recently been profiled in Life magazine. Before leaving New York, she approved the cover of her latest book, Goodnight Moon. I first read about her in the biography by Leonard Marcus, Margaret Wise Brown, Awakened by the Moon, which I bought the instant it hit the shelves in 1992. For the next 10 years, I kept the book on my nightstand to read and reread before going to sleep. Margaret's story became my own private Goodnight Moon. Upon each reading, I discovered something new about her. I searched for parallels between Margaret's life and my own. I had over 40 books published in the first 10 years of my career. I love springtime, flowers, and rabbits. Yet I would never be Margaret Wise Brown, who was always painted in superlatives: beautiful, extravagant, eccentric, flamboyant, enchanting, charming, smart. Margaret was born in 1910, my favorite year. Her career took off in the 1930s when children's publishing was a brave new world. Books, stories, and poetry poured from her pencil like songs from a lark. Margaret lived the life I wanted, but I was born too late and into the wrong family. Margaret Wise Brown came from money. Her father managed a Brooklyn cordage factory. Her mother, Maud Johnston Brown, was of the landed gentry in Spotsylvania County, Virginia, where I live, decidedly not of landed gentry. Maud Johnston graduated from Hollins Institute with an eclectic degree. It's possible Margaret chose Hollins College because she felt a romantic attachment to her mother's Virginia roots, deliberately snubbing her father's Yankee trade background. In 1928, Margaret traveled to Roanoke for her freshman year, where she was noted for throwing parties to mark unbirthdays and the arrival of the first asparagus of the season. On a date once, she carried a rabbit in a basket. Her grades were only average, but she excelled at writing and was instrumental in the college building a writing ring and stable. Once during a competition, Margaret whisked off her hat so her blonde hair streamed out behind her way of capturing the spectator's attention. She captured the attention of some of her teachers, too. Fed up with Margaret's lack of organization and writing, the head of the English department sent her to Susie Blair's English composition class, in the hopes Professor Blair could cure Margaret's disregard of commas and coherence. In the first one-page theme she handed to me, Professor Blair recalled, there was the faint flash of imagination, that drop of juice in the desert of requirements which every teacher of a compulsory course thirsts for. In her junior and senior years, Margaret read Virginia Woolf, failed chemistry, played the Madonna in the Christmas pantomime, waded in Carvin Creek, declared Hollins idiotic with spring, and made up stories about her roommate's imaginary family, the Getts, an unruly bunch with names such as this Get, that Get, and other Get. She saw her own name in print for the first time. An essay she'd written for Marguerite Hersey's Chaucer class was published in Cargos. Margaret graduated from Hollins in 1932, returned home to New York, and drifted for some months. My identification with Margaret breaks here. I knew I wanted to be a writer from age 10, realized I wanted to write books for children at the age of 15, and got busy. I found it hard to understand why Margaret didn't know what she wanted to do. After all, she was a Hollins girl. While her classmates were getting married, Margaret took a job in Altman's department store. She thought about becoming a writer as she idly sold knives and forks. At last she moved to Greenwich Village, shared an apartment, and enrolled in a fiction writing class at Columbia. Nervous words jittered from her pen. One story began, Jean came into the drawing room and just sat down. It seemed to her that she had come into so many drawing rooms of late and just sat down. She was tired of drawing rooms and of sitting down. Despite her less than sparkling college record, Margaret had great respect for the English language. Words, she believed, should take readers someplace. The words in her adult stories did not, and she knew it. Her roommate urged Margaret to sign up for the Cooperative School for Student Teachers, nicknamed 69 Bank Street, after its address. Bank Street emphasized progressive education, and student teachers observed children's behavior and language patterns. They also participated in the children's literature workshop, where here and now writing was encouraged. Bank Street's founder, Lucy Sprague Mitchell, had developed experimental texts that were a departure from the mainstay of children's readers, folk tales, fairy tales, and myths. Mitchell believed children wanted to read about children like themselves, in the style of language they actually used. Bank Street gave Margaret structure. The first piece she wrote for the workshop, as Margaret said, tried too hard to sound like a children's story. It had been all decked out like a Christmas tree with echoes of all the fairy stories I had ever read. She settled into a rhythm of listening to children, grabbing their made-up songs and poems with a quick hand, and writing stories such as 15 Bathtubs, which was published in Bank Street's Here and Now storybook. One day, an idea swirled around Margaret's head. She snatched it from the air before it vanished and scribbled a story about an old, old woman with a toothache, 17 cats, and one little gray-blue kitten. Margaret sent the piece to a children's publisher. When the Wind Blew, her first book for children, was published by Harper in 1937. With her royalty advance check, Margaret bought every bloom off a flower cart, filled her village apartment, called everybody she knew, and threw a grand party. And so began Margaret Wise Brown's career as a writer of books for young children. She moved through the world in a new way, spying on spiders, watching a bird's wings slice the sky, hearing a mouse swallow. The universe of 4-year-olds informed her work. Her remarkable success might have been akin to her taking her cap off in the riding ring, letting her hair fly behind her to nab attention. Or perhaps she was simply fascinated by the fact she was prolific, like discovering she could divine water, and she racked up published books the way other people collected stamps. Once undisciplined and unmotivated, Margaret blossomed in the fledgling field of children's books. In her new position as editor for William R. Scott, the first publisher of Here and Now picture books, Margaret scouted new writers and illustrators. She approached her classmates for children's stories in the Hollins Alumni Quarterly. And she continued to write her own books, among them Bumblebugs and Elephants, the first story for the very young that could endure chewing, stomping, and tearing. In a letter to a friend, Margaret said, "The first great wonder in the world is big in me. That is the real reason that I write." Her laser-like focus was awe-inspiring, but in her private life, those sharp lines blurred. When she met Michael Strange, socialite, poet, and ex-wife of actor John Barrymore, they became friends. The older woman held enormous sway over Margaret. Soon, Margaret left her village apartment and moved uptown to a flat across the hall from Michael Strange. She set her four-poster in the living room so she could lie in bed and watch the East River slide by outside her window. Yellow organdy curtains and summery landscapes reflected Margaret's sunny side, but could not disguise the gray moods that descended on her like New York's wintry skies. Michael Strange badgered Margaret to give up writing small books for small children and create something important. Margaret turned once more to adult fiction, stories about glamorous older women influencing younger women. The stories remain unpublished, and Margaret told her editor at Harper, "You will be relieved to hear that I have written no more stories, serious fiction. I don't think I ever will again." Throughout her short career, Margaret tussled over what constituted important work. "I'm in transition," she wrote to Lucy Sprague Mitchell. "One never knows towards what until we get there." To escape Michael Strange's daily theatrics, Margaret found another place to write her small books, in a little house hidden like a secret. Cobble Court, the odd 18th century two-room townhouse she rented as a studio, became her stage. Margaret draped fur blankets over the furniture and placed feather pens on her desk to give the impression she wrote with swan's quills nestled in fur skins. In Cobble Court, Margaret could be dramatic too. Her vacation house was her favorite. The old granite cutter's cottage rose sturdily from the rocks on Vinyl Haven Island off the coast of Maine. Margaret called it Only House, even though it wasn't, and there she lived like a cat. She padded around in rolled-up pants and boat shoes. She saw the moon rise from Witch's Wink, a door that opened to nowhere. She washed her face in a basin under an apple tree. She daubed watercolor pictures of things that pleased her. She filled a pair of rubber boots with bayberry. Alone in her attic studio, Margaret wrote about trains and traffic lights, firemen and shy little horses, and rabbits running away from their mothers. At Only House, Margaret settled down. My own career felt like a train stalled on the tracks. Since age 15, I had aimed my flinty focus at the field of children's books, but over time, the edges had begun to feather. Who was I to criticize Margaret's less than sterling decisions? Reading about Margaret every night encouraged me to read her work. I rediscovered Goodnight Moon and The Runaway Bunny. I took comfort in The Big Red Barn and Home for a Bunny. The spell Margaret cast on 3-year-olds worked on me as well. I craved to write joyful books for the very young, and I longed to know more about Margaret. At night, before I sank into restless dreams, her voice whispered in my ear, "Don't forget about me." In June 2003, I set out on a pilgrimage to Hollins University. I had in my mind to write my own book about Margaret, but in truth, I was drawn to Hollins for personal reasons. I was aware of their highly regarded Master's in Children's Literature program. Although I lacked an undergraduate degree, I was working on my Master's in Fine Arts at another institution. When I graduated, I hoped to apply to the Children's Literature program at Hollins, but first, I needed to see the campus. As our car rounded the curve where barn swallows scalloped the air, I gazed down at the chapel steeple and the porthole windows of the library and the green expanse in between, and said to my husband, "Oh, it's like a little town." In that instant, I knew I belonged at Hollins, the home that had been waiting for me all these years. The Margaret Wise Brown collection is archived in special collections on the 3rd floor of the Wyndham Robertson Library. Beth Harris hauled out box after box of materials for me to sift through. When I held a typescript of The House of 100 Windows with Margaret's penciled changes in the margins, my hand shook. Among the 800 cataloged items, I found a receipt dated the day I was born, July 10, 1952. While I had been making my way into this world, Margaret had been buying pillowcases, tea towels, and packets of needles for Only House. The homely list gave me a pang. Margaret would be dead by November of that year. As I touched her effects, I had the sense of a life interrupted at the height of a career, as if Margaret was a character in a play that had gone out for a packet of needles and never returned. In the summer of 2005, I entered the Children's Literature Graduate Program, a dream come true. I was 53 years old and so excited to have a real dorm experience, I outfitted my room at Carvin with preppy pink and green Tommy Hilfiger bedding and a poster from the Margaret Wise Brown Illustrator Show I had attended earlier that year at the Eric Carle Picture Book Museum. Every day I walked to the library. Once, as I crossed the little bridge, books clasped to my chest, I thought I would never be happier. Upstairs on the 3rd floor, I often wandered from the children's literature alcove into the Hollins room to leaf through older spinster yearbooks, seeking images of Margaret I'd never seen before. I found them. But my favorite photo of Margaret is not in the yearbooks, but one snapped by her fiancé, a man she met after Michael Strange died in 1950. The photograph was taken shortly before Margaret's own death in 1952. Dressed in slacks, her thick blonde hair in a messy knot, Margaret sits on the ground, her back against the worn clapboard siding of Only House. Wildflowers spring around her. She holds a glass of champagne and looks directly into the camera. Her expression says that she has left behind the petulant, defensive Margaret who once noted in the Alumni Quarterly, "How many children have you? I have 50 books." That she has willingly accepted the work she was meant to do. "We are no longer amateurs," she wrote to a young picture book colleague. That at long last she is comfortable with herself. One night, Margaret dreamed of a green room and a red balloon and a picture of a cow jumping over the moon. In the morning, she reached for her black notebook and scrawled line after line about a rabbit who named all the things in his room before he went to sleep. Then she picked up the telephone next to her bed and dialed her editor. Margaret read the news story to her, titled "Goodnight Moon." It was accepted on the spot. The illustrator, Clement Hurd, painted the great green room wide and open like a stage set. His art invites readers to step into the pictures and walk around. In each scene, the room grows darker while the moon outside the window rides higher. When Goodnight Moon was published in 1947, mothers and fathers bought the book and read it to their children at bedtime. 65 years later, children everywhere fall asleep to Margaret's words, the wonder of the great green room, big inside them. Hollins gave me the room I needed to sort out the roots of my restlessness, the space to explore the wonder big in me. Margaret handed me the courage to take another road. It's a slow turn. The blinkers are still on. I'm in transition, and it's okay. For everyone in the dream will stray, hours of the night and some of the day. Think of the world as it can seem. Towards such a world, first comes the dream. Margaret's favorite season, spring, is just over the mountain. As you rush downhill toward the end of your time here, ease your tight focus a little. Put the top down. Let restlessness carry you someplace new. Let apple blossoms burst on your delighted eye.